What's going on, guys? It's Jack here, also known as Marley G, and today I'll be taking you through the first scratch track of Jet Vela, DJ Fro, and our two-track EP. We're calling it Project One for the moment. Still in discussion about names and that sort of stuff. But this is the first scratch track, and the reference for this one is You by Dom Dollar, which you can see there. And something I've learned that is super important if you're trying to take influence from a reference track, or you're trying to emulate a sound, a particular sound in a certain way, then having the song in your DAW session, your project session, is super important. The ability to constantly check back and forth between what you're working on and what you're trying to emulate is so important, because it's what you're trying to do. Why wouldn't you want to make it easier? I don't know. I think it's kind of self-explanatory. Anyway, so we've got the reference track in here, and I've split it up. Intro, verse, chorus, breakdown, verse, build up, chorus, outro. That's really important for your song structure. Song structure is super vital. And especially phrasing. Like, you don't have to abide by normal, contemporary Western music rules, but like for pop music, popular music, it usually does. So phrases of like bars of 8 or 16, 32, that's the norm, unless you're delving into a bit more underground kind of stuff in terms of EDM anyway. But I've also just got these empty MIDI clips here, which just kind of give an idea of where certain elements in the song are coming in and out, which is also really helpful in the arranging, in terms of arranging. So we've also got, I guess that's pretty much all you really need when for a reference track, like going back and forth. Just to kind of give you a guideline of where you should be doing things similar to other successful artists, because they're clearly doing something right. So first layer that I emulated was the Atmos, so the atmospheric layer, and that was done by combining, it was 3 layers of Vinyl Crackle, this kind of chain dragging sample, and this beach forest ambience. Kind of this sample is very like in the background. It's pretty hard to hear, but that's everything together. It's quite subtle, not too over the top or anything like that. It just provides a good level of ambience and layering to kind of fill out the mix in that first little section where there's not a lot going on. Moving on from the atmosphere, we've got the keys, which are they are a preset in Serum, DR Velocity Conga, and I've added oh no, I haven't. I thought I'd done that. Never mind. So that's just an Ableton preset, super nice. And then there's a bit of automation that we've done using different effects and stuff within Ableton to give it a kind of just to kind of spice it up a little bit, add a bit more variation. As well as that, we've got this this little sample here. You can see there, and that is the tail of a key hit, or the conga hit, drenched in reverb, and then so I've just taken that, recorded it into back into Ableton, and then flipped it so you get this really nice lead in to the keys. It's a really cool effect that I use quite a bit. And then the last key aspect, or the main melodic aspect, other than the bass, is these backing keys. Super simple sound. Basically, it gets its effect from these two LFOs here. I can go more into this sound later, but there's nothing too complicated to it. But utilizing this chord structure was using this serum patch with this chord structure just worked really well. Even though there's a lot of variation going on in the conga section, having this just super basic ended up working really well because it's quite subtle. It's in the background, so it didn't really stand out too much. It didn't really, conflict with anything that was going on up in the conga section. Other things that we've got going on. So this layer is just like a white noise riser. It is a bit too loud. I think I'm going to bring that down a bit. It is quite loud, but the main point of the white noise risers and down risers are to build and release of tension, for the build and release of tension. So they're a good little thing to add. Like, you don't need to overdo it. I've overdone it clearly. Just needs a bit of fine tuning, but it does add a lot to your mix, adding those little things. Then this is the last kind of melodic. I don't even know if you could call it melodic. This is more of just like a tension element. So it's super simple. It's just a sawtooth wave with a bunch of unison and detuned, like a little bit. The main kind of acoustic feel it gets is from this LFO here, which is basically just like a ton of little tiny indents in from the zero, which creates this kind of like really slow wobbly effect. And if you put it on things like level or even like fine tuning, then you get this really kind of long fluttery sound it sounds a lot more inconsistent, which is a lot more human. So you can get some really cool effects with it. So you can see I've put that on the level here, and of a bit of this white noise as well. And then there's just some compression and reverb on it. But yeah, you can create some really cool stuff that way. It's like a really cool way of making more analog sounding synths and stuff like that because of inconsistent voltage. I could go into it, but maybe another video. Anyway, this layer is a little breakbeat sample loop. This is just from Ableton. Like, they have a bunch of really cool loops and stuff that you can check out. Another white noise layer. This is for the second half of the song, just to kind of thicken the mix out a bit more. There's a few different samples on this layer, but it's mainly just this shaker that's just been drenched in reverb, as well as this cymbal crash. And then we can move on to our bass and drums. So first off, we've got sub bass. So this is another Serum preset, but it's just a sub bass, and basically it's it's kind of just like a sine wave, I'd say. Yeah, that's all it really is. I mean, there's not a lot else going on. Um, but it just works really well. It's a nice sounding sub. The lead bass. So this is probably one of the more important parts of the song, just because, you know, if we want to base this song off the reference track, You by Dom Dollar is very, you know, bass oriented. It's kind of, the bass kind of drives the song forward in that kind of way. So making a bass that stood out was really important for us. And what I came up with was basically just like this layered bass, like layered stacked oscillator bass. I go over some of the stuff, like some of the techniques I used to make this bass in my FM bass tutorial. You should check that out, it's really good. Self plug. Most of this stuff is pretty like self-explanatory. You've got, you know, this kind of pluck envelope shape that's modulating your cutoff, which creates that really iconic pluck sound. But the most important thing, I think, when making bass sounds in Serum is direct out sub bass, which basically what it does is you drop the octave of your sub bass by 1, set it to sine so it's super clean, and then hit this button direct out, and then anything that you do past the point of this oscillator won't affect the sub bass output at all. So if I touch, you know, the octave or the pan or the level, then sure, it'll change the sub, but anything else in this entire synth won't touch the sub at all. So that leaves you with a lot of room to experiment through. You know, you can have your higher your other oscillators doing, you know, crazy shit, and just have an EQ on in your effects, and these oscillators won't phase cancel your sub anymore because you've EQ'd, you know, I don't know, like any under 100 hertz is when, you know, you start getting muddy and phase cancellation and all that sort of jazz. But using this technique, you can pretty much completely avoid muddying up your own sub bass, and you get a really nice clean bass that way. The only other thing that's going on really is just this filter cutoff automation towards the end of every 4 bars or so, and that just creates a bit more variation within the song, which is always important, you know, keep the listener on their toes. And we've also got this reverse bass sample, which just leads, again, similar to how I did the keys, it just leads into that first bass hit. There is another sample line, just like a bell hit. I feel like it's important to note at this point that, yes, I know this project is very unorganized, but it's important for me to kind of get my ideas down as quick as possible. I haven't really had the time to organize this just yet, but when something comes to me, I kind of just spit it out wherever I can fit it, rather than, you know, sorting it out first. I usually sort it out before the mix down stage, just because I feel like it's a bit easier. Well, it's definitely easier for the mix down, but I'm not too fussed about that when I'm trying to get all my ideas down. Anyway, the last section is mainly percussive elements, so this group is all just drums. And a really important thing within house music is the groove, which usually, because the kick is usually, 4 to the floor, clap is usually on the 2 and the 4. So there's not a lot of variation in that, and the hats as well. So often you have to kind of use the bass and other percussive elements to create a groove within the song. And in this case, I used a second, so there's your main clap, and then this is actually a snare, even though it's called clap. But what this snare is working in conjunction with the closed hat and the open hat to kind of create this groove. And on their own it doesn't really sound like much, but once you kind of put everything together, starts to get that groove going, and that's what you want. It's super, super important in house music because, that's often what's attention grabbing. That and the bass for me anyway. Other elements are this shaker, which is just like a breakdown element. And that just uses variation in velocity and pitch to kind of create a live, like a live feeling to it, like someone's actually, shaking something. But it's really just, program samples. And then the very last line or audio channel we've got going is this snap, and that's just a verse element, so not too important to the drop or the chorus, whatever you want to call it, but it is important, an important little part. So yeah, I guess I'll just show you a few of the elements all together, and then I'll wrap the video up. Yeah. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it informative, just how to kind of structure your song or how to lay out a song properly. A couple things before I wrap the video up. Sidechain compression is pretty much happening to everything in this song. So everything is being compressed, sidechain compressed via the kick. Super important in electronic music because you want that kick to be super prominent. Basically what sidechain compression does is when the kick hits, whatever's being compressed will only be compressed while the kick signal is coming through. So you get this really kind of dramatic ducking effect if you do it quite heavily, or if done subtly, you can just get the kind of initial impact of the kick through without disrupting the sound too much. It really is just a personal preference thing. But yeah, I guess the only other thing to note is that we are getting vocals on this track, so it'll be an interesting process, seeing how that will fit in as well. Should make the whole mix process pretty fun and pretty interesting. But yeah, I'll keep you all posted, so just keep checking the blog. I'll have a lot of cool little videos up showing you the progress on these tracks. Hopefully we'll get the second scratch track done soon, and we'll give you a walk through that as well. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, just leave a comment. I hope you have an awesome day. This is Jack, also known as Marley G, and I'll see you guys later.